Hey everyone, welcome to K2 Crest Audiobooks Hub. I'm so excited you're here. Today, we're diving into another amazing book that's going to take us on an incredible journey. So, grab your headphones, get comfy, and let's jump right in. Let's start.
Let's start the book. The Courage to be Disliked. Introduction. The Secret to True Freedom. Have you ever felt trapped by your past experiences, weighed down by the expectations of others, or exhausted by the constant pursuit of validation? The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga offers a profound and instantly liberating perspective on how to reclaim your personal freedom. Based on the deeply transformative theories of the 19th century psychologist Alfred Adler, this book dismantles the common belief that our past dictates our future. Instead, it presents a radical yet highly practical philosophy. You can change your life at this very moment, regardless of what has happened to you before. Through an engaging dialogue between a cynical youth and a wise philosopher, the authors provide actionable tools to break free from the desire for recognition and the heavy burden of interpersonal conflicts. By understanding how to separate your own tasks from the tasks of those around you, you can unlock a level of mental clarity and peace you never thought possible. This summary will guide you through these paradigm-shifting concepts, equipping you with the courage to live authentically, even if it means being disliked along the way. Point 1. Denying trauma. Why your past dictates nothing. We live in a world that is deeply infatuated with cause and effect, especially when it comes to our psychological well-being. If you struggle with anxiety, fear, or a deep sense of inadequacy, modern society is quick to point a finger at your childhood. We are constantly told that our current emotional struggles are the direct result of past traumas. This way of thinking is heavily influenced by Sigmund Freud's cause and effect psychology, officially known as etiology. Freud suggested that our psychological wounds dictate our present behavior. But Alfred Adler, one of the three giants of 20th century psychology alongside Freud and Jung, completely rejected this notion. He proposed a shocking and highly controversial alternative. Trauma does not exist. This is not to say that terrible things do not happen to people or that those events do not cause deep pain. What Adlerian psychology argues is that we are not determined by our experiences, but rather by the meaning we give to them. This forms the foundation of teleology, the study of the purpose of a given phenomenon rather than its cause. According to Adler, we do not act because of past causes. We act to achieve present goals. To understand this paradigm shift, consider the story of a young man who refuses to leave his house. Whenever he tries to step outside, he experiences debilitating anxiety, his heart races, and his hands shake. A Freudian therapist might dig into his past, looking for a childhood trauma or a severe case of bullying that caused this agoraphobia. They would conclude that the past trauma is the cause, and the inability to leave the house is the effect. Adler completely flips this equation. He suggests that the young man has a present goal. He does not want to go outside. To achieve this goal, he manufactures the physical symptoms of anxiety and fear. Why would someone create such a miserable reality for themselves? Because by staying inside, he becomes special. His parents worry about him, they cater to his needs, and he becomes the center of attention. If he were to step outside and join society, he would become just another average person. He might face rejection, failure, or mediocrity. To avoid these painful possibilities, his mind and body collaborate to create anxiety, which serves as a highly effective tool to keep him safely indoors. The past trauma is merely an excuse he uses to justify his present goal. This concept is profoundly uncomfortable because it strips away our favorite excuses. If our past determines our present, then we are powerless victims of circumstance. We can shrug our shoulders and say, "I can't help the way I am. Look at what happened to me." It is a comforting thought in a dark way because it absolves us of responsibility. But if teleology is true, If we are actively creating our emotions and behaviors to serve hidden present goals, then we are entirely responsible for our own lives. We are not victims, we are the authors of our destiny. Think about how often we use the past to justify our current inaction. Someone might claim they cannot form deep romantic relationships because their parents had a terrible divorce, leaving them with a fear of commitment. Adler would argue that this person simply has a present goal of avoiding the vulnerability and potential pain of a real relationship. To achieve that goal of safety, they bring out the memory of their parents' divorce as a convenient weapon to defend their isolation. The past is basically an archive of memories, and we pull out the specific files that support the narrative we want to live by today. We ignore the memories of successful relationships and focus only on the failures, using them as building blocks for our current psychological walls. Embracing this reality requires a tremendous amount of courage. It means acknowledging that your life right now is the result of your own choices, not a tragic script written by events outside your control. You are not a helpless piece of machinery reacting to inputs. You are a conscious being who assigns meaning to your experiences. A terrible childhood event can be interpreted as a reason to never trust anyone again, or it can be interpreted as the very reason you must strive to build a deeply loving and trustworthy family of your own. The event is the same. The meaning you give it changes everything. When you stop looking backward for causes and start looking forward at your hidden purposes, a massive weight is lifted off your shoulders. You realize that you have the power to change right here, right now, simply by choosing a different goal. If your goal shifts from protecting myself from potential rejection to experiencing genuine human connection, your mind will stop manufacturing fear and start generating the courage needed to step into the unknown. The past has no power over you unless you actively choose to give it power. By denying the determinism of trauma, Adlerian psychology hands you the keys to your own psychological prison, inviting you to step out into the light of absolute personal responsibility. Point 2. The hidden reason we choose unhappiness. If we possess the power to choose our own goals and assign our own meanings to life, a glaring question immediately arises. Why are so many people deeply unhappy? Surely no one consciously wakes up in the morning and decides to be miserable. Yet, Adlerian psychology insists that unhappiness is a choice. To understand this seemingly harsh claim, we must explore the concept of lifestyle. In Adler's terminology, lifestyle does not refer to whether you wear designer clothes or live in a minimalist apartment. It refers to your fundamental worldview, your personality, and the deeply ingrained tendencies you use to navigate life. It is the lens through which you view yourself and others. According to Adler, we choose our lifestyle around the age of 10. At that point in our lives, we assess our surroundings, our family dynamics, and our own perceived strengths and weaknesses, and we decide on a strategy for survival and belonging. Some choose to be the clown to get attention, others choose to be the dutiful overachiever, and some choose to be the helpless victim who needs constant rescuing. The critical point is that we chose this lifestyle, and because we chose it, we can choose again. But changing our lifestyle is incredibly difficult, not because we lack the ability, but because we inherently lack the courage to do so. Consider the comfort of familiarity. Even if your current lifestyle makes you unhappy, it is entirely predictable. You know exactly how people will react to you, you know exactly what kind of disappointments to expect, and you know how to handle your specific brand of misery. It is like wearing a pair of shoes that are a size too small. They hurt, but you are used to the pain. If you were to choose a new lifestyle, say shifting from a pessimistic victim to an optimistic creator, you would be stepping into complete unknown territory. You would not know how to handle new challenges, you might face unexpected criticism, and you could potentially fail in entirely new ways. The fear of this unknown is so paralyzing that most people decide it is safer to remain in their familiar unhappiness than to risk the uncertainty of change. To see how we actively maintain our chosen lifestyle, let's look at a common everyday scenario discussed in the book. A man is sitting in a nice restaurant wearing his favorite expensive suit. A waiter accidentally walks by and spills hot coffee all over the man's lap. The man immediately erupts, shouting at the waiter, his face red with rage. If you were to ask him what happened, he would say, "The waiter spilled coffee on me, and it made me so angry that I couldn't help but yell." He views his anger as an uncontrollable force that bypassed his rational mind. This is the traditional cause and effect view of emotions. Adler completely disassembles this sequence of events. He argues that the man did not yell because he was angry. Rather, the man fabricated the emotion of anger so that he could yell. His goal was to subjugate the waiter, to assert his dominance, and to force an immediate, groveling apology. To achieve this goal quickly and effectively, he needed a tool. Anger was that tool. He pulled it out in a split second to intimidate the waiter. To prove this, consider what would happen if the man's phone rang right in the middle of his shouting match, and he saw it was his highly respected boss calling. He would likely answer the phone in a calm, polite voice, say, "Hello, sir. How can I help you?" and carry on a normal conversation. The moment he hung up, he would immediately resume shouting at the waiter. This proves that anger is not an uncontrollable internal explosion. It is a highly controllable, purposeful tool that we put away and take out as needed to manipulate others and control our environment. We use our emotions to achieve our hidden goals. When we claim that our emotions made us do it, we are simply trying to evade responsibility for our actions. We are refusing to admit that we are actively choosing our behavior. This realization applies to feelings of unhappiness as well. If you are chronically unhappy, Adlerian psychology prompts you to ask, what is the hidden goal of my unhappiness? Often, the goal is to avoid the difficult tasks of life. If you convince yourself that you are fundamentally flawed, unlucky, or destined for misery, you give yourself a permanent excuse to stop trying. You never have to take the risk of starting a new business, asking someone on a date, or pursuing a difficult dream because your unhappiness proves that it would be pointless anyway. Your misery becomes your armor against the terrifying demands of life. Breaking out of this cycle requires what the authors call the courage to be happy. Happiness is not something that happens to you. It is something you must actively choose, and it requires bravery. It means dropping your weapons of anger, sadness, and victimhood. It means stepping out of your comfortable, predictable misery and facing the world without excuses. When you finally accept that your emotions are tools you control and your lifestyle is a choice you made, the illusion of helplessness shatters. You realize that you have always held the power to change. You were simply too afraid to use it. Now the choice is entirely yours. Point 3. Why all your problems are interpersonal problems. One of the most radical and absolute statements made in The Courage to be Disliked is this: all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. At first glance, this seems like an extreme exaggeration. Surely some problems belong entirely to the individual. What about the anxiety of losing a job, the pain of a physical illness, or the stress of not having enough money? How can these possibly be about other people? Adlerian psychology patiently explains that if you lived completely alone in the universe, if there were no other human beings in existence, all of your problems would instantly vanish. Let us break down this profound concept by looking at the feeling of inferiority. The author of the book, Ichiro Kishimi, shares a personal story about his height. For much of his life, he felt a deep sense of inferiority because he was shorter than average. He constantly wished he could magically grow a few inches, believing that if he were taller, he would be more confident and his life would be better. But one day, a friend pointed out something that shifted his entire perspective. His height was only a problem because there were other people around to compare himself to. If he were the only person on Earth, the concept of short or tall would not exist. His height was an objective fact, but his feeling of inferiority was a subjective interpretation based entirely on his relationship with others. This distinction between objective facts and subjective interpretations is crucial. We all have objective traits: our bank account balance, our physical appearance, our level of education, but these facts only become problems when we place them in a social context and compare ourselves to the people around us. Money is only valuable because it dictates our social standing and our ability to interact with the world. Without other people, gold is just a heavy yellow rock. Therefore, the stress of poverty is essentially the stress of social disadvantage. Even the pain of a physical illness is deeply entangled with interpersonal relationships. We worry about becoming a burden to our family, losing our status at work, or being pitied by our friends. Adler distinguishes between feelings of inferiority and an inferiority complex. Feelings of inferiority are entirely normal and actually quite healthy. They are the driving force behind human progress. When we see someone who is more skilled, more knowledgeable, or more successful than we are, we feel a natural sense of inferiority. This feeling acts as a catalyst, motivating us to study harder, practice longer, and improve ourselves. In this healthy state, we use our perceived shortcomings as fuel for growth. However, things take a dark turn when this natural feeling devolves into an inferiority complex. An inferiority complex occurs when we begin using our perceived shortcomings as an excuse for our failures and our unwillingness to try. The internal dialogue shifts from, "I am not good at this yet, so I must work harder," to, "I am not good at this, therefore there is no point in trying." We start using our traits as shields. I can't get married because I'm not good looking. I can't succeed in business because I didn't go to a prestigious university. We turn our objective facts into insurmountable barriers, entirely to avoid the risk of interpersonal rejection. If we do not try, we cannot fail. And if we do not fail, we cannot be judged by others. Fascinatingly, Adler also points out that an inferiority complex often flips into its exact opposite, a superiority complex. When a person feels deeply inferior but lacks the courage to improve themselves through genuine effort, they will often try to artificially inflate their status. They do this by bragging about their achievements, name-dropping famous acquaintances, or constantly displaying luxury goods. This boastful behavior is actually a massive red flag indicating a profound lack of self-confidence. A truly confident person has no need to constantly prove their worth to others. There is an even more twisted version of the superiority complex, which the authors call the boasting of misfortune. This happens when individuals use their trauma, their illnesses, or their terrible life circumstances as a weapon to control others. They constantly talk about how much they have suffered, implicitly demanding special treatment and sympathy. By portraying themselves as the ultimate victim, they make themselves untouchable. No one can criticize them, and everyone must cater to their delicate state. In this way, their weakness becomes their greatest source of power over other people. When you realize that all problems are rooted in interpersonal relationships, you begin to see the invisible strings tying you to the opinions of others. You realize that your anxieties, your excuses, and your complexes are all elaborate defense mechanisms designed to protect you from the judgments of society. To break free from this exhausting cycle, you must fundamentally change the way you interact with the world. You must stop seeing life as a fierce competition where you are constantly measuring yourself against the people around you. This brings us to the most practical and immediate tool Adler offers for reclaiming your peace of mind, a concept that will completely revolutionize how you handle every relationship in your life. Point 4. The freedom found in separating your tasks. If all our problems are rooted in interpersonal relationships, then the ultimate key to happiness lies in figuring out how to navigate these relationships without losing our sanity. We often find ourselves entangled in massive webs of stress because we care too much about what our parents think. We worry about our coworkers' opinions, or we obsess over trying to control the behavior of our romantic partners. Adlerian psychology offers an incredibly sharp, surgical tool to cut through this tangled mess. It is called the separation of tasks. The concept is beautifully simple, yet incredibly difficult to practice. Adler asserts that almost all interpersonal conflicts arise from one of two things. Either you are intruding on someone else's task, or someone else is intruding on your task. To eliminate the conflict, you must figure out whose task is whose, draw a firm boundary, and refuse to cross it. But how do you determine who owns a particular task? The rule is straightforward. You must ask yourself, who ultimately receives the result brought about by the choice that is made? Let us look at a classic example that plays out in millions of households every day. A child absolutely refuses to study. They ignore their homework, play video games all night, and their grades are plummeting. The parents, driven by anxiety and love, intervene. They yell, they confiscate the video games, they hire expensive tutors, and they force the child to sit at their desk for hours. This creates a deeply toxic atmosphere in the house, filled with resentment, anger, and constant fighting. From an Adlerian perspective, the parents are making a massive mistake. They are intruding on the child's task. Let us apply the rule. Who ultimately receives the result of the child not studying? It is the child. If the child fails their classes, does not get into a good school, and struggles to find a job in the future, the child is the one who bears the direct consequences. Studying is the child's task, not the parent's task. When parents force a child to study, they are crossing a boundary, which inevitably leads to rebellion and conflict. Does this mean parents should entirely abandon their children and let them fail? Not at all. Adler suggests that the parent's task is to create a supportive environment, to let the child know they are always ready to help if the child asks for it, and to provide guidance. But the actual act of deciding to study must be left to the child. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. If you try to force the horse to drink, you will only get kicked. By clearly separating the tasks, the parents free themselves from the daily agony of forcing compliance, and the child is given the space to take genuine responsibility for their own life. This principle is equally transformative in the workplace. Imagine you have a boss who is completely unreasonable. They are quick to anger, they micromanage, and they constantly criticize your work no matter how hard you try. Your natural instinct might be to bend over backwards to please them, to walk on eggshells, and to let their bad mood ruin your entire day. You might spend your evenings complaining to your friends about how unfair your boss is, letting the stress consume your personal life. Apply the separation of tasks. Your task is to do your job to the best of your ability, to communicate professionally, and to maintain your own integrity. Your boss's emotional state, their anger issues, and their unreasonable expectations are their tasks. Who suffers the ultimate consequence of the boss being an angry, toxic leader? The boss does. They will eventually lose the respect of their team, damage their own career, and live a miserable, stressful life. It is not your job to manage their emotions or to cure their toxic personality. When you deeply internalize this, you can look at your screaming boss with a sense of calm detachment. You can say to yourself, I have done my work well. His anger is his problem to solve, not mine. The separation of tasks requires us to drop a heavy burden that we were never meant to carry. We spend so much of our lives trying to manipulate the feelings and actions of others, believing that if we just say the right thing, work hard enough, or act perfectly, people will treat us the way we want to be treated. But the hard truth is that how other people evaluate you, judge you, or react to you is entirely their task. You have absolutely no control over it. When you stop trying to control what is not yours, you experience a profound sense of lightness. You no longer need to exhaust yourself trying to be universally liked. You can focus all your energy purely on your own tasks. living authentically, doing your work earnestly, and treating people with respect. If someone chooses to misunderstand you or dislike you despite your best efforts, that is their task to deal with, not yours. This is the first major step toward true freedom. But to fully embrace it, we must confront the most deeply ingrained addiction in human society, the desperate need for applause. Point 5, why you should never seek recognition. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned by a system of reward and punishment. If a child cleans their room, the parents praise them. If the child breaks a vase, the parents scold them. In school, if you get the right answers, you receive a gold star and the teacher's approval. If you fail, you get a red mark and public embarrassment. This system seems entirely logical and effective, but Adlerian psychology warns that it creates a deeply destructive psychological trap, the desire for recognition. Because we have been raised in this reward and punishment environment, we unconsciously adopt a terrifying belief. We only take action if there is a reward praise waiting for us, and we only avoid bad behavior if there is a punishment rebuke attached. This means our entire moral compass and our motivation become externalized. We stop asking, is this the right thing to do, and start asking, will someone praise me if I do this? Let us examine the catastrophic effects of this mindset in the workplace. Imagine you take the initiative to clean up the communal office kitchen. You spend an hour scrubbing the counters and organizing the fridge. You do this because you want your coworkers to notice and say, wow, thank you so much, you are amazing. But Monday rolls around and no one says a word. People make their coffee and leave without acknowledging your hard work. How do you feel? You likely feel intense resentment. You might vow to yourself, I am never cleaning that kitchen again. This reaction perfectly illustrates the danger of seeking recognition. Your action of cleaning the kitchen was not driven by a genuine desire to contribute to a clean environment. It was a transaction. You were purchasing praise with your labor. When the payment of praise was withheld, you felt cheated. If you live your life this way, constantly performing for an audience, you are essentially living someone else's life. You are molding your behavior, your career choices, and even your personality to fit the expectations of your parents, your boss, or society at large. You become a puppet, and the people holding the strings are anyone who has the power to give or withhold approval. Adler is ruthlessly clear on this point. You are not living to satisfy other people's expectations. And conversely, other people are not living to satisfy your expectations. If you constantly seek recognition, you will spend your entire life in a state of anxiety, terrified of stepping out of line and losing the applause. You will suppress your true desires, bite your tongue when you should speak up, and stay in miserable situations simply because they look good to the outside world. This brings us to the core thesis of the book, captured perfectly in its title. To be truly free, you must possess the courage to be disliked. This does not mean you should actively try to anger people, become a selfish jerk, or engage in destructive behavior. It means that you must pursue your own tasks and live authentically, knowing that the inevitable byproduct of doing so is that some people will not like it. When you stop twisting yourself into knots to please everyone, you will inevitably clash with people who expect you to conform to their desires. Your parents might be furious if you choose an unconventional career path instead of becoming a doctor. Your coworkers might dislike you if you leave at 5 p.m. to spend time with your family instead of working pointless overtime just to look busy. Their anger and disappointment are their tasks to manage. Your task is to live your life. Being disliked is actually a badge of honor. It is the ultimate proof that you are exercising your freedom. It means you have stopped living as a slave to recognition and have started living according to your own principles. Imagine the immense relief of walking into a room and not caring whether the people in it approve of you. You can speak your mind, be genuine, and relax into your true self. The heavy armor of people-pleasing falls away. But a critical question remains. If we stop seeking the approval of others, And if we completely separate our tasks from theirs, don't we run the risk of becoming entirely isolated and selfish? If we don't care what anyone thinks, won't we end up entirely alone? Adlerian psychology anticipates this fear and provides a profound counterbalance to the separation of tasks. True freedom is not about isolating yourself, it is about connecting with the world in a completely different, much healthier way. Point 6. Community feeling, finding your true belonging. If the separation of tasks is the tool we use to cut the toxic interpersonal cords that bind us, we might mistakenly think Adler's end goal is total isolation. It is easy to misinterpret not caring what others think as an excuse to become a self-centered hermit. However, Adlerian psychology presents a brilliant counterbalance to this individualism. While we must separate our tasks, our ultimate goal in life is to achieve what Adler called community feeling or social interest. This is the compass that keeps our freedom from turning into selfishness. Community feeling is the deep internalized sense that we are a part of a larger whole, that other people are our comrades rather than our enemies, and that we have a secure place where we belong. To understand this, we must first recognize the fundamental flaw in how most of us view the world. We act as if we are the center of the universe. When we are obsessed with seeking recognition, we are actually being incredibly self-centered. We are constantly asking, what will this person give me? How do I look to them? Or why isn't anyone paying attention to me? We view other people merely as props in the movie of our own lives, existing only to validate our existence. Adler insists that we must shift our perspective. We are not the center of the world, we are merely a single point on a massive, interconnected map. A true sense of belonging cannot be achieved by standing in the center of the room and demanding that everyone look at you. Belonging is only achieved through active commitment and contribution to the community. You move from asking, what can this person give me, to what can I give to this person? But what exactly is the community? This is where Adler's vision becomes breathtakingly expansive. When we think of community, we usually think of our immediate circles, our family, our school, or our workplace. Because we define our community so narrowly, our sense of belonging is incredibly fragile. Take the case of a student who is severely bullied at school. If the school is their entire universe, being rejected by it feels like the end of the world. They feel they have nowhere to go, no place to belong, and suicide can tragically seem like the only escape. Adler advises us to look at the larger community. The school is just one tiny cup of water in an infinite ocean. If you are struggling in your immediate environment, you must remember that you also belong to your neighborhood, your city, your country, and ultimately the entire human race. You even belong to the community of living things and the universe itself. This is not just abstract philosophy, it is a practical mechanism for resilience. If you are fired from your job, you have lost your belonging in one small, specific community. But you have not lost your belonging in the larger community of humanity. You are still a valid, worthy human being. To cultivate this community feeling, we must learn to see others as comrades. If you view life as a competition, then everyone around you is an enemy. Your coworker's promotion feels like your failure. Your friend's successful marriage makes you feel inadequate. In a competitive mindset, the world is a terrifying, hostile place. But if you drop the desire to be superior and embrace the separation of tasks, you can start to see people as equals who are simply walking their own paths. You can genuinely celebrate their successes because their victory does not diminish your worth. When you view others as comrades, you naturally want to contribute to their well-being. This contribution does not have to be a grand, world-saving gesture. It can be as simple as doing your job earnestly, being kind to a stranger, or supporting your family. The key is that this contribution is driven by an internal desire to help the community, not a desire to extract praise. You contribute because it makes you feel useful. And that feeling of usefulness is the ultimate source of human happiness. You no longer need someone else to say good job in order to feel valuable. You know your own worth because you know you are contributing to the whole. To make this practical in our daily lives, we must fundamentally change the way we communicate with others, stepping away from the hierarchies we naturally build. Point 7. The danger of praise in vertical relationships. If we are to view others as comrades and foster a genuine community feeling, we must dismantle the invisible hierarchies that dictate our daily interactions. Unknowingly, we spend most of our lives operating within vertical relationships. In a vertical relationship, one person is positioned above the other. This dynamic is obvious in boss-employee or parent-child dynamics, but it deeply infects our friendships and romantic partnerships as well. Adlerian psychology warns that as long as you maintain vertical relationships, you will never be truly free, and you will never escape the trap of the inferiority complex. The most shocking manifestation of vertical relationships is the act of praising someone. We are universally taught that praising people is a positive, encouraging thing to do. However, Adler strictly forbids both rebuking and praising. Why? Because praise is inherently a judgment passed down from a person of ability to a person of no ability. Consider the dynamic of a mother praising her child for helping to clear the dinner table. She smiles and says, "Good job, you are such a good helper." Now imagine if the mother's husband cleared the table and she turned to him and said in the exact same tone, "Good job, you are such a good helper." The husband would likely feel patronized or annoyed. Why? Because the phrase "good job" implies a vertical hierarchy. The mother is subtly placing herself above the child, evaluating the child's action favorably. When we praise someone, we are unconsciously asserting our superiority over them. We use praise to manipulate behavior, trying to steer the person into doing what we want them to do next time. If we abandon praise and rebuke, how do we acknowledge good actions? Adler suggests we must build horizontal relationships, relationships of absolute equality. Even though a parent and child have different roles, knowledge, and responsibilities, they are equal as human beings. The same goes for a CEO and an entry-level worker. To maintain horizontal relationships, we replace praise with pure gratitude, respect, and encouragement. Instead of telling the child, "Good job," the mother should simply say, "Thank you. That really helped me out." Or, "I appreciate you doing that." The difference is profound. Thank you is not a judgment or an evaluation. It is an honest expression of gratitude between equals. When a person hears a genuine thank you, they immediately feel that they have made a contribution to another person. As we established earlier, the feeling of contribution is the root of true self-worth and community feeling. Praise creates dependence on external validation, whereas gratitude fosters internal courage and self-reliance. Building horizontal relationships also requires us to radically change how we determine human worth. In our society, we usually judge people based on what they do. We value people based on their productivity, their paycheck, or their visible achievements. If a person cannot work, perhaps they are severely ill or elderly, society subtly deems them less valuable. Adlerian psychology demands that we stop judging people on the level of their actions and start valuing them on the level of their mere existence. Take the example of an elderly parent who falls into a coma. They cannot speak, they cannot work, and they cannot do anything. If human worth is based purely on action, this parent would theoretically have no value. But to their child standing by the hospital bed, the parent's mere existence is a profound source of comfort and value. The child does not need the parent to achieve anything. They are just deeply grateful that the parent is still alive. We must apply the same unconditional acceptance to ourselves and the people around us every day. You do not need to perform flawlessly at work, earn a massive salary, or receive constant praise to be a valuable member of the community. Your existence alone is a contribution. When you build horizontal relationships, you stop trying to climb above others and you stop letting others step on you. You realize that you are perfectly equal to everyone else on earth. You do not need to prove yourself to anyone. This realization strips away the anxiety of the future and the regrets of the past, allowing you to finally focus on the only thing that actually matters, the present moment. Point 8. The conclusion. As we dismantle our obsession with the past, let go of our need for recognition, and establish equal relationships, we are left standing squarely in the present. Yet, many of us are deeply terrified of the present because we are obsessed with the future. We view life as a grand narrative, a linear journey from point A to point B. We believe that we are currently just on our way to our real life, which will begin once we get the promotion, find the perfect spouse, or buy the dream house. Adlerian psychology shatters this illusion, urging us to embrace what is perhaps the most difficult challenge of all: the courage to be normal. Our obsession with reaching a grand destination stems from a deep-seated desire to be special. We want to be exceptionally successful, incredibly wealthy, or widely famous. Interestingly, if people realize they cannot be specially good, they often pivot to being specially bad. They turn to delinquency, rebellious behavior, or extreme victimhood. Why? Because being specially bad also guarantees attention and sets them apart from the crowd. The one thing we absolutely cannot tolerate is being just normal, average, and ordinary. We equate normal with worthless. But what if life is not a straight line pointing toward a grand destination? Adler suggests that life is not a line at all. It is a series of isolated, independent dots. Every single dot is the present moment. Think of it like a dance. When you are dancing, the goal is not to arrive at a specific spot on the dance floor. The goal is simply to dance. If you are dancing earnestly in the present moment, you are already complete. This is the difference between kinesis movement that is incomplete until it reaches a destination and energia actualization, where the movement itself is the goal. If you view life as a kinetic journey, then all the time spent traveling is just a waiting period. The years spent studying, practicing, or working are viewed as a sacrifice for a future reward. If you die before reaching your goal, your life is deemed incomplete or a failure. But if you view life as energia, every moment is complete in itself. The violinist who is practicing in their room is dancing the dance of music in that exact moment. The journey is the destination. When you adopt this mindset, you realize that you do not need to be special. You do not need a grand, world-changing destiny to have a meaningful life. You only need to shine a bright spotlight on the here and now. When you shine a spotlight directly on your feet, you cannot see the dark past and you cannot see the foggy future. You can only see the step you are taking right now. You stop worrying about what happened 10 years ago, and you stop agonizing over what might happen 10 years from now. You live earnestly and intensely in the present. The author concludes with a profound thought on the meaning of life. People often ask, what is the meaning of life? Adler's answer is blunt. Life in general has no meaning. The universe does not owe you a purpose, and there is no grand script written for you. But this is not a nihilistic statement. It is the ultimate declaration of freedom. Because life has no inherent meaning, you get to assign meaning to it. The meaning of your life is whatever you choose it to be. If you choose to navigate by the guiding star of community feeling, if you strive to contribute to others and view them as comrades, you will never lose your way. You can dance through the present moment, free from the heavy chains of past trauma, liberated from the exhausting desire for recognition, and completely detached from the toxic need to control other people's tasks. You have the power to change your life this very second. It does not require years of analyzing your childhood, nor does it require you to force the people around you to change. It simply requires the courage to take a step forward, the courage to be normal, and most importantly, the courage to be disliked. The world is simple, and life is entirely what you make of it. The choice to be free is yours, right here and right now.
Thank you for listening. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If it healed you even a little, send it to one person you love. This is K2 Crest Audiobooks Hub. Come back again.